Welcome again to Stephen Green, who's busy with the sheep and double busy today, actually, because there's some breaking news. And it's been breaking for a few days, of course, and that being the Prime Minister of Great Britain, Sir Keir Starmer. It's all coming to the surface. There's a lot going on. And I'll tell you something, Stephen, I wasn't taken in by his apology.
Do you know what? Politicians do their very best to avoid apologizing. So when they apologize, it's in terms of if anybody has been inconvenienced or troubled, then I apologize. So there's never sort of a blanket apology for behavior, and an apology and an apology for being gullible and for believing it. I mean, what kind of an apology is that? I do apologize. I'm stupid. It just doesn't make any sense. I think his days are numbered, but as a prime minister, I hasten to add. But the Bible's prescription for leaders is ever more appropriate all the time. You shall appoint able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness. And in the in the Mandelson man, I'm afraid you have, when he was appointed ambassador, a lot of pundits were praising his ability, but on all of the other categories, he's failed. And I mean, what kind of ability is it to get on with the president of the United States? Well, yeah, great, but we can all do that. But you're supposed also to keep your country's secrets
Uh,
and yeah. But it's honestly, the emails that have surfaced about the relationship of Peter Mandelson with Jeffrey Epstein were quite shocking. I mean, there's a whole lot which is shocking about the Epstein scandal.
and more to come. And interestingly enough, this last lot of a million and odd emails, etc., contains some important businessmen in Great Britain that have had to resign. I mean, it is thoroughly bad. And another person that's not got the best, or even for many years, actually, Andrew Bailey, governor of the Bank of England, he's struggled at times, but he's actually come up with a statement today saying, literally, I'm not being pious, but something is very wrong here. We have a society that just puts up, tolerates with some awful stuff. And he's touched on something there, not being pious, but he recognizes there's something rotten.
Well, yes, and he said, "I'm shocked." He said, "Now, me being of a certain generation." And having watched the film Casablanca, when anybody in authority says "I'm shocked," I do apologise, and this isn't any insinuation for Mr. Bailey at all. But I always remember Claude Rains as the crooked chief of police in Casablanca closing down Rick's bar. When Rick says, "Why are you closing down?" I am shocked to find out there is illegal gambling going on in this establishment. But as he turns away, one of the lads pops up and says, "Here's your winnings, monsieur." Ah, Messi. So I mean, it's just the kind of hypocrisy of those at the top. Not Mr. Bailey, not saying about him, but they pretend. Politicians pretend to be shocked by things, and it's just It's just performative. It's just art, really.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's just occurred to me, Stephen, that we have our own movie channel on our platform. And a lot of our movies are in black and white, as was Casablanca. And it's a favourite movie of mine as well. And it gets the message over, doesn't it? And you think of modern movies, and I'm afraid to say we don't allow them on the platform. There are certain modern movies that are good, but not a lot. And they try and convey the state of a nation, the current morality of a nation, but they don't get anywhere near as many of the old movies. And I'm even thinking of the favourite modern phrase at the moment of gaslighting. That's an old movie and it speaks volumes, but it doesn't do it in a crude way, a promotion of feminist way. Frankly, you look at a modern coloured movie and see a woman with a automatic rifle with hate in her eyes, dominating the scene and killing as many people as she can. Now,
Yeah.
I mention that as an example because that's not effing and jeffing. That's something very subtle in a movie. We have changed our society in so many ways, Stephen.
Well, I mean, the thing about Casablanca and also about the movie Brief Encounter is that in the end, after facing no end of as it were, relationship or sexual temptations, the main characters do the right thing. And in the case of Casablanca, of course, keeps you guessing, right up until the end. But in the end, and all the characters, the two bar owners in it, and the policeman, they're all crooked, but all three of them end up doing the right thing, and they end up acting sort of morally but whilst denying that they have any morality. There's the famous piece about where Humphrey Bogart character has his gun pointing at the policeman's heart. This is pointing straight at your heart, and he says, "My least vulnerable spot." So they know their shortcomings, but they still, in the end, act in a moral fashion. The other great one I saw the other day, again, have to watch it, was The Magnificent Seven. Which again, today's feminists would not like, because there you have 7, 8. Well, you have something like 24 male parts, parts for men, parts for real men. Before you have, one part. I forget who the girl was, but played the girlfriend of the young gunslinger who decides to stay. But it's real men doing, what a man's got to do. And there was a little boy, I think, was he off Spain or off France, been in the news, a young boy about 13. He swam 4 miles to shore to raise the alarm to save his mother and his brother and sister who were stranded on a rock. And, but they said, well, what were you thinking of when you were, when you were swimming? I didn't come out with any emotional guff or any feminine. So he said, I'm just thinking I've got to get to the shore. And, so it's male. You have an objective which you're going to go for. You're going to do it above all else. And as long as that is a godly objective, then it's entirely right. The problem with feminism is it puts so many feminine virtues of safety and of being gentle and in very gushy sort of feminine terms. I mean, men can be gentle, but you have to, as I keep saying, you can temper justice with mercy, but start with mercy and justice will not get a look in. So this young boy's been applauded for basically for exercising masculine values at the age of 13 and doing what a man had to do. And praise God for that he has made us male and female. I mean, guys, if men watching this, or even women, you may not understand your wife or your husband, but you're not meant to, because men think differently from women, and we just have to get over it. And the other thing is that men can go on about to their about their wives. I remember the line in one of Jake Thackeray's songs. He was at the Yorkshire troubadour, about a woman who would never use 2 or 3 words when a couple of 1,000 would easily do. But I mean, guys, every time, whenever your wife sort of speaks something or sings, she's doing it about an octave higher than you. That's God-given. So every time she speaks, she's actually preaching a sermon on God's creation. And I praise God for that.
Well, there you are. If you want to tie this lot up and stick with Humphrey Bogart, but move over to a colour film, watch The African Queen, and there are various pointers in that. That's another super film. Let's go into reality. You've been going through it, Stephen, over the years, and I want you to recount right from the beginning because you've got a court case in the next couple of days. Now, what did you have your collar felt for in the beginning?
Well, what happened was I stood with a placard with a Bible verse on it outside the Marie Stopes Abortion Centre in Ealing. And at that time, there was a local authority buffer zone around it, which forbade anybody, saying anything controversial about, well, anything at all about abortion. So I stood there with a verse from Psalm 139, "Thou hast possessed my reins," it says, which is my insides, and it says, "You looked after me from my mother's womb." So the psalmist is saying that's me there in my mother's womb. So I thought it was quite appropriate. But I was convicted in the Ealing Magistrates Court, anyway, of doing or contravening a public spaces protection order, which so a sub point there is that the government bring in these things that was brought in to prevent youth drinking and causing a nuisance in town squares. That was why the law came in about public spaces protection orders. But then of course, it naturally got expanded to prevent people having a pro-life witness outside the abortion centre. Then I went to the Crown Court. Crown Court inevitably supported the conviction, and now we are appealing against it on the grounds that the facts of my case are completely different from those that made the council or allowed the council to bring in the public spaces protection order in the first place. So we now go to see if there is a case stated. We go. So that is on Monday. Now I'm now actually a recent court case gives me a great cause for optimism, because a number of activists from Palestinian Action have just got off charges of smashing up equipment in a facility, a defense facility, because their feelings about Palestine are deeply held. So apparently that's okay. There's one, and this was a jury. I mean, I'm not obviously not against juries. Juries can get it wrong, but in this case, they seem to have been persuaded by defense barristers, waxing eloquent about the passion with which the activists support Palestine, or in inverted commas, I'm going to put that quickly before anybody complains. But the jury failed to reach a verdict on a charge of grievous bodily harm, in which one of the activists, a man, attacked a woman police officer with a sledgehammer and broke her back. The jury could not reach a verdict on that. And there was another couple of charges of breaking and entering, which the jury couldn't reach a verdict on as well. So the message goes out that as long as you have a cause in which you passionately believe, then you can virtually get away with almost murder, certainly get away with grievous bodily harm. Some Conservative MPs, I think, are trying to persuade the direct public prosecutions to hold a retrial, but there's no enthusiasm for it. The reason, of course, it won't apply to my case is that the Palestinian Action is a progressive, in inverted commas, fashionable cause, standing up for unborn children in what should be the safest place on God's earth is not a fashionable cause. It's two-tier justice all over again.
Exactly. I was in conversation with our Rome correspondent yesterday, and we were saying, golly, how has Giorgia Meloni got away with that one? Because she's turning boats back and we can't in the United Kingdom. And she even came out with a statement yesterday saying no more Pakistanis will be allowed in Italy.
Wow.
Now, can you imagine that happening in Great Britain? But they're fed up. They're in the EU even. And she can say that with or without the ECHR. Why can't we in the United Kingdom? Well, we know why we can't. But the other thing that came out in the conversation was there is a problem in Italy, and it's from the progressive left-wing judges. Now, that's what we've got in spades, haven't we, in the United Kingdom?
Well, I mean, in Italy, in Turin, there's just been a riot in which 100 police officers were injured, mounted by far left balaclava-clad thugs. The usual left Islamo left kind of cadre that they have there. So there's that there. In Spain, of course, the government have just legalized, have they not, or encouraged 500,000 migrants to become citizens because they think the leftists going to think that that's going to sway the vote and keep
They
them
did
in
it 10 years ago.
office.
They're doing it now. They're finding it so much opposition. This is clearly because they want the votes of the illegal and semi-legal immigrants. And it's a thing that does go in decades here. And they suddenly legalize everybody. I suppose it saves a lot of bureaucracy, but I'm sorry, the average Spanish guy is very against this.
Yeah, my thoughts now turn to the Gorton and Denton by-election forthcoming up in Manchester, in which very similar, the Green Party has found someone a woman who claims to be a plumber, but doesn't appear to be standing up for working class people. She's completely net zero and pro-Palestinian and anti-Semitic. And the Green Party launched their campaign in a Pakistani community centre. But the publicity still that they released from it shows precious few Pakistanis, in a Pakistani community centre, but don't seem to be any Pakistanis there. So I think this was done to, best not frighten the horses. But the Green Party will still expect the third of the constituency who are Muslim to come out and vote for them on a sectarian, anti-Semitic ticket. And the battle is going to be between the Green Party and Reform. And, the Christian Voice, I mean, I'm non-party political, but, in this case, surely sectarianism cannot be allowed to triumph. I say be allowed to. There's nothing the establishment can do about it. They've started the wind and they're reaping the whirlwind here. But there's an awful lot riding on this by-election between
there is, and
Green Party and Reform, and of course the rest will be nowhere. But it'll boil down to those two, and people just have to go out there and they will be thinking that they have to vote Reform in order to stop a sectarian, mindless, bonkers, evil group of people.
It's an unholy alliance in every sense of the word. I'm surprised that they've put, they being Reform, Matt Goodwin, who is a university professor, probably the only right-wing one in the whole country. And maybe he should have been placed in somewhere a little easier than that, because we all know in your neck of the woods, Caerphilly, what happened there with another unholy alliance in a recent by-election. There's a lot to play for at the moment. Let's hope the great British public get it right.
Yeah, I mean, the Caerphilly by-election was interesting. Labour held a seat, and their guy sadly died, and then it boiled down to a two-horse race between Plaid Cymru and Reform. Now, in England, Reform can play the none of the above card. So that we're not the Tories, we're not Labour. Forget about the Lib Dems and the Greens, but we're not we're not the other two. In Wales, and of course in Scotland, it doesn't work because in Wales there is an alternative, which is Plaid Cymru. Now it's hard left, pro-trans, pro net zero,
pro 20 miles an hour. And as a resident of Wales, there, it drives me mad. They go to the extreme, don't they?
Yeah, so everything that Labour has brought in, Plaid Cymru have supported, but they've been able not to be tarred with the same brush. So in Caerphilly, Reform were disappointed to come second, but actually they came second from nowhere, and they should have taken credit for that, or been at least sort of pleased about it and not be negative about it. In politics, in life, it's always good to be positive. and look on the look for the good, not just in people but in situations. How can we, as Boris Johnson once said, there's no such thing as disasters, only opportunities. And then of course then he spoiled it by saying sometimes there are opportunities for fresh disasters. but there you are. So that was
no, Plaid are a real problem in the Principality. They are extremely pro-Welsh language, of course. They're causing a lot of extra expense in Wales, and therefore things like the National Health Service really suffer in Wales because the money goes to other things.
Yeah.
And how do you get, well, we go back to Tony Blair, don't we? He's created this situation both in Scotland and in Wales by giving the two kingdoms their own autonomy in effect, and it's only brought dreadful divisions. When one goes back to Tony Blair's time, what's he given us? Universities often full of third-rate degrees. He's even given us Peter Mandelson. He's not done a good job, really, has he?
No, but I mean, in Wales, there is of course nothing wrong with the Welsh language. But I mean, I'm reminded of both Brussels and Strasbourg, actually, where street signs are up in two languages. In Strasbourg, it's funny because they're in French and they're in Alsace, which is very similar to German. But when the Germans come there from over the border and they look at the signs, they're used. Brussels, of course, well, Belgium is a place which cannot decide which language it speaks, so they put everything up in two languages. And in Welsh, it's the same. The worst of it, to be honest, I mean, I really support the Welsh language. There's so much that you learn about the culture and about the archaeology and about the history through the language through what places are called. And I was thrilled to find the other day that Tesco have introduced signs, bilingual signs in Welsh and English. The only problem was they did it in a town in Helston in Cornwall, and the Cornish were like less than impressed. But the only the big problem, of course, is road signs. By the time those yellow road signs with a great big screed on it about what is ahead. By the time you work out which is your language, because in different parts of Wales, whether it's majority English speaking or majority Welsh speaking, that determines which way up the Welsh and English are. If it's a Welsh speaking area like Carmarthen, the Welsh will be at the top. If it's English like Monmouth, the English will be at the top. So by the time you've worked out which your language is, then you haven't noticed what the actual message was, which might be danger, cliff in 50 yards or something.
I know, Stephen. We'll have to agree to disagree on this one. Language is a curse, don't forget, and it certainly is if you're in business in Wales, and I know you are as a farmer. So are we with the restaurant trade, and the number of hoops we have to jump through, translations we have to guess, which is very costly, and by the time the decision comes through the local authority, the situation has passed. It is a nightmare, and I repeat, don't forget Tower of Babel. This was a curse, and having lived more of my life in Europe and several countries, I realize more than most why it's a curse. Yes, I am bilingual, Spanish, English, and I speak other languages. But I'm sorry, it holds things up, and especially in a language you're not very familiar with, it can cause confusions, and it does. And in one sense, it creates the European Union, which neither of us, I don't think, are really in favour of.
I mean, you make a very good point there about Babel and the curse. I mean, it is as it is now. The problem in Wales, of course, is that everything becomes raised to the level of a religion. So the Welsh language becomes has a religious identity, and they defend it with a fervour, and everything has to be in Welsh and English, which doubles the cost of printing. Well, not quite doubles, but you know what I mean. Cost of printing on everything. Rugby, of course, becomes a religion, and of course in Wales now wokeness is now become a religion, and everything is done with such a such a passion. Thinking that men can self-declare as women. They do it with such a passion. Wales is aiming to be the most diverse nation in Europe, and all this kind of rubbish that you get. And net zero again, don't get us started. It is, yeah, it is a very strange place to live. And of course, all the wokeness, all the DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, that takes precedence over public health, which is why our NHS is in such a state in Welsh, because it's, you hire diversity officers and think that you're doing something really marvelous, and you're not. And so yeah, things. It's the public. It's the prosperity of the people needs to be prioritized. And they will only do that by getting things into the right perspective, by worshipping the King of Kings. And you say, God, hear me, look, I thought Christianity was all about evangelism. No. Jesus Christ as King of Kings is more than just words in a worship song. So we need to understand, as Christians, need to understand that we serve the King of Kings, and that is not just sort of some sort of heavenly concept. It really means that the Lord Jesus demands obedience from earthly governments, and as well from people and churches, for that matter.
Well, we'll say amen to that, and we'll close with that, Stephen. We'll also, before we close, say we're not getting at you, the Welsh people, quite the reverse, because neither of us would live there if we felt that. Let me tell you something that we have mentioned on other occasions. Charity. Who's the top dog for giving to charity in the whole world? It's the Welsh. So they're lovely, warm-hearted people. But there is a tiny bit of the population that has their own religion. And unfortunately, it spoils it for the rest.
Well, I mean, we did have a great. I mean, this is where the Welsh a revival was in 1906, and of course, 1400 years before that, there was the first Welsh revival of the evangelists, men like Dewi Sant, St. David, St. Tylo, St. Gwinius, and Ilfryd, who founded the first university in the Western world at Llantwit Major, Llantrisant, the holy place of the three saints, that means. And so that, and also, let me fit. I mean, it's just, so we have that. The problem, really, one of our problems with religion now in Wales is that if you have a church, it's either got to be Welsh speaking or English speaking. That's why I'm saying it gets elevated to a religion. And the guy who invented it, Eisteddfod, has a lot to answer for as well. But I mean, love it. It's great to have a festival which champions song and dance and the spoken word and choral speaking. I mean, if you don't live in Wales or Kenya or East Africa, you won't know a thing about that. And that's quite great. So there's some good bit, but again, elevating anything which is not the Lord Jesus Christ to the level of a religion is paganism, and I'm afraid we're all subject to that. We're all tempted by it.
I've got to admit it that I do speak a tiny bit of Welsh. Important words, of course, like bara brith and banana. Those are easy words to learn, and so we'll bypass that. And I can also say that we've filmed a lot, many years in Eisteddfod, and some of the talent there is quite outstanding. But that is culture as opposed to language. Oh, golly, that's something to be thought of. Stephen, we've run out of time. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Diane, Lonnie, diolch yn fawr.